So we are having Jonathan Towers with us today, and I know that you already spoke about some microservices. You will be talking about caching strategies, and this is what I would like you to elaborate more on, because we had some changes in caching recently. So there was the hybrid cache introduced.
Yeah.
Can you tell me what do you think about this change? How it changes our projects?
Yeah, hybrid cache has been a great addition to ASP.NET Core because, as you probably know, since you've implemented it recently, it adds the ability to basically do the two things that people are usually going to do anyway when they're doing caching in a web application, and that is to basically have in-memory caching and then to have a remote cache, like a Redis cache, for example, and to have those two work together as a hybrid. So you can basically tell the application, hey, if I'm looking for this key, is it already in memory on this server? That's going to be the fastest place to get it. Mm-hmm. And if not, then I'm going to go get it from a Redis cache or some other place like that. And then obviously the third backup option would be to go reload it again from the database.
Yeah, okay. And do you think, do you see any advantages? Because as you said, in most cases we already implemented some kind of strategy of grabbing first in memory, then the distributed cache. Do you think that there are any advantages of using hybrid cache actually when we already have this strategy in place from our legacy projects?
Yeah, I think the best time to use a hybrid cache implementation is if you don't already have this implemented yourself.
Okay.
And the reason is basically it's implementing it for you in a safe way that you know is going to work correctly. Very low amount of code you have to write yourself, which means the chances of a bug in your caching strategy is very low because Microsoft wrote most of that code for you.
Okay.
And it's very well tested. But if you've got it already...
Because I remember that just a couple of months ago it was still in the preview version, so is it already the general availability for this?
I believe it is now general
Okay.
availability, yes.
Okay, so we can safely use it and we can just be thankful for the new library that was coming to us.
Yes, and it did come out with .NET 9,
Yep.
but it was written in a way to be reverse compatible with .NET 8 as well.
Okay, that's perfect. That's perfect. Okay, that's really nice. So can you tell me in general, because we've got a lot of options when it comes to caching, especially with web applications. So we've got the in-memory, we've got hybrid, we've got distributed cache, we've got output cache. There's a lot. So what is a rule of thumb when implementing a caching strategy? What should be in which one?
Yeah, there is probably such a thing as too much caching.
Yeah, exactly.
I mean, not just the implementing it being more difficult, but also, the performance gains start to get outweighed by the amount of things that you're having to check or places that you're having to look, amount of memory that you're using up. So there's definitely such a thing as too much caching. I think the hybrid cache is nice because it gives you the option to basically have the typical three-tier approach, which is your actual data store, typically a database, and then a remote shared cache like Redis, and then an in-memory cache. That's the typical approach that works the best for caching things. And so hybrid cache kind of gives you that right out of the box, super simple.
Okay, so in simple words, we can just use the hybrid cache and forget about anything else.
If you want to do all of those things, that's a great way to do it. If you want to do something a little bit more yourself, distributed cache or doing memory cache works well as well, but then you have to kind of invent it yourself.
Yeah, exactly. You need to be aware of all the pros and cons of different strategies. Exactly. And actually, this comes to my next question, because when we are using distributed cache, most likely we are creating some kind of microservices, some kind of the distributed applications, because and also the because of the scaling the strategies. So what would you also say about creating proper microservices when you will go actually with the microservices and not the monoliths applications? When there should be this transition point from monolith to microservices?
Yeah, some of the basic rules that I think are really important to think about are, does your team match microservices or not? So for example, say imagine you have 5 or 6 developers and they're going to be maintaining the entire application. That really matches a monolithic application better than, for example, a team of 500 or 50 developers, all of which are going to be split up into small teams, each of which will focus on a different part of the application. That's a better fit for a microservices application. Another example would be, because microservices are so hard to do correctly, it's very dangerous to start out on a microservices project if you don't really need to. So another thing that I like to ask clients about a lot is, do you actually need this? What are the reasons that you're trying to implement your application this way? Scalability, monoliths can scale as well, right? We know you can scale horizontally or vertically in cloud applications, and so a monolith can scale that way. So if someone tells me, oh, I need hundreds of users or thousands of users, even if they say hundreds of thousands of users, I think maybe a monolith could still be a good fit. Do they have other reasons they need to do it as well, like the team size?
Okay, so this is quite interesting, because I always was thinking about microservices as a reflection of our business. So if microservices, because to create microservices in a good way, you need to really know the domain that you are working on,
yeah.
right? And you said about the team sizes. This doesn't match for me. Do you think that within any business, when you have hundreds of developers, still microservices would be a better fit than the monolith? If, for example, the domain of the business is mostly reflecting the monolith approach?
Yeah, I think if you start to go down the list of things, and I talked about 10 of them in my talk yesterday. If you start to go down that list of things and you realize that you're falling on the side of the monolithic architecture on most of them, then it's probably the best idea to do a monolithic architecture, because you're going to be fighting upstream if you try and do microservices, for sure.
Okay, and can you give us any advice what to avoid when starting with the microservices? What are the biggest pitfalls that we'll probably get when creating microservices?
In one word, coupling.
Okay.
So what do I mean by that? Well, it's a word that we use a lot in software development, right? We're trying to have low coupling in our applications between modules. And in microservices, it's very easy to accidentally create coupling between your different microservices. That could look like a lot of different things. It could look like shared libraries that you're sharing between different microservices. It could look like sharing team members, like we talked about a minute ago. It could look like sharing a database. That's a common one, having all the microservices share a database. It can even look like shared cross-cutting concerns, logging, configuration, security, things like this that are cross-cutting concerns across all microservices, and sharing those could create coupling. And another common one is synchronous calls between microservices that creates coupling.
That creates coupling, but in some cases probably it's something that we really need to implement. Yeah, it's all about the strategy, right? Also of the needs between the microservices.
That's right.
Yeah, but in most cases I can agree with you that unfortunately in most of the projects that I was working in, we ended up, unfortunately, with some distributed monolith at the very end, and it was really painful. But but if we know everything at the very beginning, it would be much easier. But this is also, as we said, about knowing the domain properly, and then we are able to design it in a better way, right?
I usually tell clients to think of their calls between microservices as being 99% asynchronous through some sort of an event bus messaging system, and then the exceptions, very small number hopefully of exceptions that have to be synchronous calls directly. And then there's approaches you can take to manage that. There's a pattern that you can use called the circuit breaker pattern that will help make sure that if there are synchronous calls between services, that those don't create coupling accidentally.
Yeah. All right, thank you very much, Jonathan. It was a pleasure to talk with you. Enjoy the rest of the conference, and I hope for the best for your next session.
Thank you.